All right, this is day 2 and day 3 of building an 8-figure AI coaching company in public, talking about literally everything that's on my mind every single day and giving you all the alpha along the way. Okay, so obviously I missed yesterday, which is a great lesson. Okay, we're off to a great start, but I did call this daily-ish videos, and so I'm sticking by that. I'm going to talk about GPT-5 and show you some exact marketing tests. That's probably what I'll name the title and the thumbnail. Somewhere in the description, I'll put the timestamp of where you can just jump if you want to check that out and see some of the tests that we have using like emails, VSL bots, avatar profiles, all the different bots that we use inside of our program, and comparing basically GPT-5 to Opus, which is what most of them are on, Opus and Sonnet. I'm going to talk about other couple little things that are on my mind there, but again, just go to the timestamp for that if you want. So one of the projects that I'm working on is basically like an autonomous AI like marketing writer. So we're starting with daily email writer. Like I said, in a previous video, it's very easy to get AI to write emails. It's like literally very basic system prompt. Put in the examples, put in the stuff that you want, etc. However, you still, boo-hoo, you still have to come up with the ideas. You still have to use your brain. But point being, what I really wanted to do was try to come up with something that was autonomous. So if you're a busy coach, how can you get the best marketing emails? Like it's pretty easy to come up with decent marketing emails, but if you look at the people who are the best email copywriters, people who there's a few different copywriters who literally their bread and butter is just writing daily emails. That's like all they do. And I'm not saying that's all they do. They do other things, but like the core thing of what they do and the core function of their business is emails, and people literally just follow them to read their emails and get their emails. And what I've said to other business owners and coaches is like, this is not throwing shade, but it's like, it's easier to do that when that's your job, right? To sit there and write those emails. But if you're running and doing a million different things, it's almost impossible to get emails of that quality. So my job was like, how can we help coaches, solopreneurs, even freelancers get that quality of email with minimal amount of work and make it so it's autonomous, meaning you don't even have to go to the AI to get the thing you want. It comes to you. It gives you the recommendations. It's trained on all your data. It's looking at everything that's going on in your business. And so far, we've done a pretty good job with it. One of the issues, though, is not the writing quality. I feel like we've definitely solved it and got it to like 100%. Like a GPT detector can't detect it. I wouldn't be able to detect it. They sound really good. They're very insightful. I think we've solved almost all the problems. There's still some issues of hallucination that are coming in and some issues of, how would I say it, like some stability. So, finding the sweet spot between the creativity and the temperature level and the fine tuning and getting it to sound human, as well as kind of keeping the stability of it. So it's not saying things, either hallucinating things, making shit up, or kind of going off the rails. So trying to find that balance is pretty interesting. And that's the problem that I've been solving. The way that I decided I feel like I finally was able to crack it more or less, which is just doing multi-step prompts. I mean, so much of what you see in AI is just basically like recursion. If you just have the AI iterate on itself, oftentimes it can get to a really good solution. So that's the solution that we've come up with, which is like we take all the raw inputs, which is training data, metrics, any inputs from the user, news, a RAG, system prompt. Like we basically put all of that stuff together, and it processes it into a single, kind of a single like instruction, which really clearly just compresses all of that information and then says this is kind of the structure of the email. It produces a brief for the email, more or less. Some of the things that we're putting in that brief to make it make sense are, what I put like here is like context and cold reading. These are really important elements. If you're trying to write a really good email, a really good marketing, one of the things that AI struggles with is sort of like this meta context. It's really hard for me to define or put my finger on it, but when I read the emails it produces, I'm like, it's missing something. Like sometimes that's obvious. It'll come out the gate and mention a topic or a previous email. It'll just assume that you have that understanding when in reality it doesn't. But there's a more subtle form of like context that it misses, which is like just this understanding of, hey, the other person reading this is like, maybe they're reading it on the toilet. Maybe they literally just woke up. They're kind of, they're on a train, their Wi-Fi is shitty. Like they're not giving their full attention. They're clicking and they're kind of reading and skimming and stuff like that. And so you have to be aware of kind of how the reader is responding and have that context to kind of pace things, right? Like if you're introducing a new concept, you got to slow the concept down, right? And sometimes you got to go a little bit faster. If you're saying something they already have heard of before, you want to respond to that. So it's sort of just this like this context and understanding. It's almost a dialogue. Obviously it's not, it's a monologue, it's an email, but it's kind of imagining what the dialogue might be. And that's a very subtle thing that even most copywriters can't do. But again, I want these to be as good as humanly possible. So that's what I've been playing with, is adding some of that context in there, just explicitly explaining to the AI, like, hey, somebody's like waking up, they're not really paying full attention. So like have this meta awareness of how you're pacing things, introducing things, etc. Related to that is this idea of cold reading. This is just more of a quality thing. It's not really an issue to fix. It's more of how to make it better, which is the best emails are, they say like enter the conversation in someone's mind, but the best emails and best copy is constantly predicting how the reader is going to respond and then vocalizing that. It creates a lot of rapport and it eliminates a lot of issues. So for example, if you're writing an email and you're saying like, I literally gave this feedback to somebody the other day where it was like, hey, they had this long sales page talking to a business owner about how they have to fix these leaks in their funnel. And it had a long paragraph about like increasing AOV and stuff like that. And I told the guy, I was like, look, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I sound like an AI right there. But like, I'm going to be like very direct with you, which is like, if I'm a business owner, I feel insulted. Like, of course I fucking know what AOV is and I have to increase my AOV in order to scale. And you're spending all this time explaining it to me, which is okay. You can still remind people and maybe some people don't actually have a clear understanding, but it goes so far to just have a line in there that says something like, you probably already know about AOV and blah, 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 but here's the part that most people miss and let me explain it to you. You have to be reminded, etc. That's an example of like the cold reading, right? You're predicting how I'm going to respond. Either I'm going to be offended, or I'm going to be dismissive, or I'm going to be like, roll my eyes. I've heard this before. It's okay to do those things in copy, but as long as you call it out. And that adds such it adds so much rapport and makes the email so much more fun to read because I feel like you're really talking to me. So I'm trying to get the AI to be able to do that. So I'm introducing some of these cold reading things in there, like, hey, make predictions about what they'll say, preemptive claims, clauses, things like that. So that's one of the things that I'm fixing. Again, the process right now that I've found that works pretty well is the very first prompt compresses all of this information. So the source, whether it's a news, it's a swipe, whatever it is, it goes into like a RAG system. Right now we're looking at like hypergraph RAG, but right now we're using just agentic RAG with re-ranking, which again is just more of that like recursion. And that seems to be working pretty well. And so it pulls the POV, and then we have an audience profile, other things, etc. And then it basically outputs like a brief on all the things that the AI needs to write. And this is helping to control it a little bit more. So it's not going off the rails, right? It's giving it a little bit more reason. Then I put it into another prompt that does the writing. This is, again, Claude Sonnet 4. We have a system prompt, and it's fine-tuned on a bunch of different emails. Right now, I've found that around the 7 to 8, around the 0.8 temperature range and the 0.9899 top P. I don't know why. Like, again, it's not perfectly stable, but that's what I found is kind of working. And blah, 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 blah. We spit all that stuff out there. Again, what's interesting is like sometimes this like multi-step system works pretty well, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes just Claude out the box works good, or sometimes just the regular fine-tuned one gives you really creative insight. So the way I decided to do it is in our program, you're just going to have the option to choose your model, whether it's Claude or OpenAI. You can choose creative mode where it just one-shots it, or you can choose the reasoning mode where it takes multiple steps. That's sort of the way that I've decided to solve it right now. I know for most people, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about with that, but we'll move on to some things that are a little bit more fun. So here's the other one, which is I'm thinking about this idea of the daemon. The daemon is really where demons come from, but daemon is a fairly interesting concept. Probably the most well-known instance of it comes from Socrates, where he basically says, I have a divine sign, a daemonian, which comes to me and which has been with me ever since I was a child. It is a voice, and whatever it speaks, it turns me away from something I'm about to do, but it never turns me towards anything. And there's been a lot of discussions about what this is, but it was sort of this like higher self, or people said maybe a demon, or people said like if you use the model of like internal family system, shit like that. It's very interesting. And then there's Jung, who explored this a lot too, and says the daemonion of Socrates reveals itself as the personification of a highly differentiated, autonomous complex, which, in its relation to consciousness, functions as an inner voice or conscience. And he did some more investigation and kind of went into it. And the reason I bring this up is because even just from like the most analytical lens you can think about, if you think about leverage, I think we talked about leverage on the last video. There's many types of leverage. And one type of leverage that I feel like is not really talked about is sort of this more interpersonal, spiritual, in the sense of like just the spirit and the animus of somebody. This is like influence leverage, which is like the personal authority that you carry, the narrative, the stories you tell, how you're able to like get other people on board with you, even karmic things, etc. Obviously, these are like kind of squishy terms. I'm sure that you can measure them and they're measurable to some degree. You could also spiritualize them and make them energetic and metaphysical, but it doesn't really matter. Like if you want to make them concrete, mechanical, and measurable, or you want to make them spiritual, or somewhere in between, it doesn't really matter. But the reality is there is something there that people are talking to, which is really, really powerful. You know, I'm talking about aura, right? That is a form of leverage, because you can have somebody communicate the exact same words, same message, same whatever, but just their tonality and their confidence and the way they carry themselves, they're able to get so much more done by doing this. And I think a lot of this comes from like removing head trash, and part of it comes from, I don't know, this like level of obsession or devotion really to some sort of like spiritual entity, some sort of ideal, some sort of purpose that's bigger than yourself. And this concept of the daemon is very interesting because it's basically a devotion to, it sounds literally demonic, right? Devoting yourself to a demon, but the idea is you're devoting yourself to some sort of higher order energy. It's a conscience, it's a fate, there's something out there that you're devoted to. And I feel like it's actually, you know, I want to explore this a little bit more, but I think articulating this for yourself, understanding your truest essence, really getting connected to your intuition, and really just guiding that is such an underrated way to have just a much better life. And I want to do more exploration on it, but that's one thing that's on my mind, and I'll try to share some other things on it. Here's a couple other things that I think are interesting. I read this article about how to not lose your job in AI. I think it's from 80,000 Hours. And this one from NFX, which is like I think it's private equity or venture capital firm talking about AI moat. And I want to read through both of these since I think they're related, just kind of thinking about AI strategy on the whole. So this is a summary of their video, the new defensibility playbook for AI founders. There's a longer version as well, but I'll read this. Most startups tend to build castles. The great ones build fortresses. The AI era has made it easy to launch, but success requires strategic defense of early momentum. Speed gets you started, but it doesn't protect you since AI has lowered the barrier to launch. Everyone can build and test their technology easily. You need to fight early battles with speed and distribution and defend with network effects. Let me get a little pencil going here. A little pencil action. Perfect. Never confuse virality for loyalty, etc. And then the 6 defensibility concepts. So network effects, basically when your users make the thing more valuable. We've started thinking about this even in our coaching program. I think this becomes way more powerful. Again, a network effect is just another form of leverage, right? And so the way that the model that I've seen is like, as the tool has made things more available, everyone has just moved up this like leverage ladder, right? Now every single person has access to technology, and they can code and create software, and they can use bots that can or agents that can do the work of themselves. So it's like, even for the average person who just has a $20 or $50, $100 a month subscription, they now have access to other people's labor in a degree, and have access to create code and software that was hard. It required capital and talent and skill and stuff before. So it's like everyone has moved forward. The leverage line has moved, right? So businesses have to get better, and individuals have to get better, right? And hopefully the world gets better. And so using some of these other like techniques, such as like networks and data and distribution and brand, becomes so much more important. Everyone has to start to use these. So brand, scale, embedding, etc. A lot of those come from the 7 Powers framework. I think there's some incomplete parts to this, but I think this is really powerful to look at. This is also from NFX. So scale economies, network economies, counter positioning, switching costs, branding, corner resource, process power. Again, you can just kind of read through this and see what you think about it. But I think all companies, now that AI has like removed that leverage line, have to focus on some of these different powers in here. Branding at a minimum has just become so much more important. So I thought that was pretty interesting. At the same time, I got this email from, I think, Brian Moran, who runs Samcart, and I think it's just a good reminder. This seems like an AI-generated email. It's, how reflective it is of him, I have no idea. But he's basically talking about like Samcart and somebody saying like, what's your $1 billion moat that's going to help you IPO? And he was like, I don't care about my $1 billion moat. I'm just trying to get from 5 million to 10 million. And the whole purpose of the email came down here, which is like, the best moat you can build is simple, move faster than everyone else, which is what NFX is saying not to do. But I actually think there's a deeper insight, which is like, instead of building the perfect platform, we shipped fast and improved based on real customer feedback. Every quarter for 10 years, that's how you get 300 million. And it's kind of this thing of like execution and consistency is still very, very hard, right? Even with AI tools, it's like the tools get better, but the practitioner and the person using the tools is still the same person. And people are not that great at consistency and not that great at iteration and just execution day after day after day after day. And it's like, this is a checkout software, right? And it just functions really, really well. So there is an idea of like, yes, you can be theoretical, and I think you should think about these things, but not to decry or to minimize the value of just pure execution all the time. This other thing too of improve based on real customer feedback. One thing that I'm thinking about too and hearing is like the feedback loops that you get from content, like daily content and content distribution is crazy. I think that's one of the most underrated values, right? Like if you're constantly producing content and putting things out there, you're getting direct feedback every single day on your product, your brand, things like that. And it's like, that is just so valuable. The tighter you can make that feedback loop, the better. Here's another email, how to not lose your job in AI. I'm going to kind of breeze through it, but I think it had some pretty interesting things. This is the summary, I believe. This is pretty interesting. So it's like, while AI threatens jobs, it simultaneously increases the value of skills it cannot perform, right? So ATMs started to show up in banks. People expected it would put many tellers out of jobs. However, ATMs actually increased teller employment for 2 decades because teller count per branch dropped from 21 to 13. This made branches cheaper to operate. Banks opened far more locations, right? So it's just this idea of like, as things get cheaper, more becomes the name of the game, right? So if you're only operating the paradigm of like, oh, we're looking at the world as it is right now, AI is able to do a bunch of these things, we lose the jobs. But it's like, imagine the next paradigm of how to make things better, the new improvements that can come in, right? So I think that's interesting. The 2 forces of automation, there's productivity force and the replacement force. When there's a medium amount of automation, it's hard to predict which force will win. But when there's thoroughgoing automation, the second will tend to. Wages initially increase about 10x, only to plunge in the late 2030s as the final human bottlenecks are removed. However, if even 1% of tasks remain human only, wages increase indefinitely, which is quite interesting. It's sort of this like squeeze. And so there is this idea of like, there's a big gap between 95% automation and 100%, right? If it only does the job part of the way, like, and there's still just a little bit of room for the human in certain areas, then the human actually becomes very valuable until it 100% replaces it, which is, very plausible. Why AI struggles, data poor tasks. LLMs are created by training them to predict internet data. LLMs remain bad at a lot of things. Typically, these are tasks missing from their training data. Messy, long horizon tasks, right? So things that require a lot of different types of context, and then physical tasks. There's no equivalent of a store of data describing physical movements. Obviously, these can all be solved, engineering problems. But that's pretty interesting. Data poor tasks, messy long horizon tasks, physical tasks, etc. I've come to see like there's an element of like wisdom and judgment that you only get from being in the arena, and you cannot reason your way, you cannot theorize your way to getting there. And obviously, again, data is wisdom, right, to a degree. But in my experience, it's like there's just, in the few things that I know well because I have experience on them, like copywriting and things like that, and you can ask AI for its opinion, it'll give you really, really sound arguments, but you just know in your experience that like, the world is not logical. People are not logical. The way things move is not always logical. So even though the reasoning is tight, the answers are not always great. Skills needed for AI deployment, spotting problems, writing clear whatever, complementary fields. Skills where demand could expand dramatically. Healthcare, luxury goods, personal development, research, entertainment. I think that's really cool. I think this idea of like the meaning economy is very, very interesting. because I believe that is something that humans crave. It's, definitely at the top of Maslow's like hierarchy of needs. And I think as some of the other stuff starts to go away, like people are going to crave meaning and experience and things like that. And I feel like there's so much more space to explore than we understand, right? And that's why like consciousness research is very interesting. There's so much more space to explore. 6 specific skills most likely to increase in value: using AI to solve real problems. So if you're not using and playing around with AI every single day, I feel like that's a mistake. Personal effectiveness, so being productive, social skills, rapid learning, getting rid of your head trash, getting in a good state is like really, really, really important. Leadership skills, also agree. Communications and taste, paying attention to culture, paying attention to yourself, your own internal daemon, like those are really, really important. Many people don't even know what it is they like or they want. They're just mimetic creatures following what other people say. So that's really powerful. Getting things done in government, I don't know much about that, so I can't speak to that. Complex physical skills, also think that's very interesting. The most at risk is routine white collar work, and then coding and technical skills for right now. Some interesting things is like leapfrog entry level positions. As AI increases the value of leadership skills, it's decreasing the value of the entry level jobs. I agree. I think things just move so much faster. You have to be thinking way faster. Avoid long training periods. I also agree. You got to be thinking in timelines of days, weeks, months at the greatest, right? So like getting your PhD, et cetera, things like that. Certifications still matter for certain paths, but like the idea of locking myself up for 2 or 3 years to learn any skill, I'm like, no, like I have to learn that skill in a week, 2 weeks, things like that. Building resilience both internally and externally is very powerful as well. So I thought this was an interesting perspective. Some things I hadn't seen before, so hopefully that was interesting. Now let's talk about the main thing, which is GPT-5, Mr. GPT-5. It's kind of interesting. I definitely, I watched the demo. I played around with it a little bit. I've seen some of the other tests that people have done. And most importantly, I just kind of pay attention to the meta and the narrative of what people seem to be saying, right? Here's some quotes, some tweets. I don't know many of these people, but like I know Balaji, I know Masad is with Replit. But it's like the vibe shift on here is everyone realizing they will still have jobs in 2030. Can't help but feel a crushing weight of diminishing returns. We need a new S-curve. Arguably, deployment is an S-curve all on its own, which is a response to this one. But a lot of people kind of talking about this idea that like, kind of that the GPT-5 thing is like, it's definitely a really good model and it's impressive, but it's disappointing in the sense that it's not this like crazy new, it's not crazy, right? It's not this like new paradigm shifting moment. It's definitely better. The things that I've seen, for example, here is like, there's embedded reasoning that just kind of happens automatically. It's less sycophantic, so it's not always like praising you and trying to be overly helpful. Better writing, better coding, basically better at everything. Improvements across the board. There's longer term context and more reliability, which is going to make it a lot better for developers to use it. It's not really a paradigm shift, a little bit disappointing in that the presentation was not that nice. Those are sort of the main things that I see. GPT-4 was trending, and there's some interesting things on here like comparing GPT-5 and Grok 4. Let's see. People talk about it, failing its first test or failing math things. Some of the charts being a little bit funny. Grok 4 beats GPT-5 on the ARC AGI, and that was kind of left out of the presentation. Matthew Berman testing it, very good model, doing a lot of the mathematical tests, things like that, which would probably be a nice way to check it out. So I think the overall like impression that I'm getting just from paying attention to what other people are saying is like, it's interesting. It's a really good model. It's definitely an improvement, but it's not the paradigm shift that many, many people expected. And many people are saying, all right, we need a new S-curve in order to get some of these crazy advances. But, that remains to be seen. I think at the end of the day, if you continue to focus on using these tools and building and deploying and creating things with them, it's awesome. Even a marginal improvement is huge, is great. But I wanted to test it with some marketing things and kind of see what the outputs are. Obviously, most people still use Claude for writing if you're doing copy and things like that. GPT-5 typically is like more reasoning, things like that, but I still wanted to test them. And we have a bunch of different, what we call like our bots that are in our group. And I basically made different versions testing it GPT-5 versus Opus or Sonnet, which is what, I think all of these are Opus, but that's Claude, the Anthropic models is basically what we build it on. So I wanted to test it with 4 different use cases. This is like an avatar buyer profile. This is a VSL. This is an email, kind of in my style, and this is like a mechanism. So I will look through them, different tasks. Some of them are more analytical, some of them are more creative. So we'll look at them. So this is the GPT-5 one, and maybe it'd be good. Let's do a little comparison like this. So this is the build the buyer. It's basically an avatar, and I just put in a VSL script. You can see some of the different things on here. I will say, like right now, I'm actually preferring GPT-5, just reading through it. Part of it is like it feels like a little bit more nuanced and realistic. Like I'm smart and hardworking. Why can't I crack this? Right? This feeling of shame. This is like my college dropout friends are making 6 figures while I'm still clocking in. There's kind of this like, I don't know, something about this just feels a little bit over the top and less realistic than this. Intimacy drops because they're constantly on YouTube instead of present. Like this feels like wife starts making stuff. Maybe we should look at cheaper vacations options this year while scrolling through her friends' Turk and Caicos photos. It's cool. It's a little bit like, I don't know. It's a little bit more over the top. It's still obviously really good and specific. But I feel like these are a little bit more realistic, which is good. That's exactly what you want for this. I'm going to scroll down. Let's do this. Here's this advanced market research journal or menu that we have. These are usually more for fun. They kind of simulate what your prospect might say. And obviously, yes, this is coming from the training model. But you can put in, the way that we use these is you can put in any scrape data, anything that you want, surveys, things like that, and it will use that information to create your buyer profile, which is obviously really good. And honestly, these things are really, really accurate already, just out the box. Okay, definitely took a while to think through it, but let's see. It's 3:11 a.m. and the fridge hum is the only thing that's keeping me company. The house smells like the rain that soaked my jacket, still crumpled in a wet ball by the door because I was too tired to hang it up. Baby monitor's a little hiss is steady in the background. My phone is a cold slap in my hand, screen lighting up my face, reflecting the exhausted version of me I barely recognize. The moment broke me today was so small it's embarrassing to admit. At 5:58 p.m., my boss fired off quick favor Slack, and I knew what it meant. Another hour, maybe 2, and the favor would quietly become my responsibility next quarter. I stared at the message, a calendar reminder. I told her I'd be there. She'd been practicing the goofy dance all week. I typed on it and felt something in my chest crack. By the time I got to the auditorium, folding chairs were already scraping. She scanned the crowd, didn't find me. And that split second before she pasted on her brave smile, stuck to the back of my eyelids, that was the moment. I look at myself in this black mirror of a phone, and I see someone who's aging in fluorescent lighting, shoulders rounded from the typing replies I don't believe in. I just want to fix my posture. Eyes that dart to notifications like a trained dog. Tell people I'm fine. I tell my parents work is good, busy. I tell my friends I like stability. I'm ashamed of how jealous I am. Jealous of the guy from high school who posted himself at the beach, a laptop, cash, and work from anywhere. Secret hopes that feels stupid to say out loud. I want one product that hits. Honestly, GPT-5 takes the cake on this one. I think for sure. Just sounds way more human. Like, really good. I like that a lot. That one wins. All right, let's look at the VSL. So this is a VSL. This is for a personal development offer that I put some things in here. And let's read it. Still working at 3 a.m. to save a deadline. A single 20-minute one-page exercise ended that cycle for A-list entrepreneurs, 2-list year, whatever. Names you know like Justin Goffey and Stanley and Dan Ferrari use this. Netflix executive said he more than double what he was making. If you grind 12 plus hours to procrastinate and then sprint till 3 a.m., this is for you. Vacation still whatever, this is for you. Meditation helped for an hour, then chaos came back. It's kind of weird. It seems like speaking in like riddles and rhymes. Plant medicine was profound, then old patterns returned. Didn't really feel very conversational. Look, if you're still working at 3 a.m. while your family sleeps, you tried, then what I'm going to share will change everything. Because the next few minutes, you can discover just go off and exercise, even though you're already successful. Yeah, I feel like this VSL for Claude is definitely way better than this one. This one still feels like it's kind of like, has no bounce or rhythm, kind of speaking in riddles. Okay, let's look at this one. This is LukeBot. You know, forgive me for write me a banger, but that's what AI told me to do. So I wanted to do it for both. $1,000 a month. Yo, your brain isn't blowing your budget for fun. It's trying to feel safe. That's why you downloaded 5 budgeting apps and still feel that gut clench before you open your bank account. You don't need to live like a month. You need a few moves that create quick wins, predictable cash flow fast. That's exactly why I built Erica's Insiders, whatever. Here's how you make money. It's very flat, like no rhythm. We cover the stuff school forgot on purpose. How to build an emergency fund, blah, blah, blah. Let's read this one. Yo, I watched my mom cry over bills at 2 a.m. when I was 8 years old. Again, I don't like how sometimes it's like very hyperbolic. If I see another fucking 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. email, I'm going to shoot myself. But it does have more rhythm and bounce. Not the quiet kind of crying either, the ugly shoulder shaking kind where she thought I was asleep, but I could hear everything through the paper thin walls of our apartment. You know what's fucked up? 24 years later, I found myself doing the exact same thing. Georgetown law degree on my wall, $200,000 in student debt on my back, and the same knot in my stomach every time I check my bank balance. See, here's what nobody's telling you about money problems. They're not actually about money. They're the 8-year-old kid inside you who learned that money equals stress, money equals fights, money equals shame. Yeah, I mean, this is better. Obviously, it's still very AI-ish, but much, much better. So I'd say Claude wins on that one. So far we got GPT-5 wins this one, Claude wins this one, Claude wins this one. And let's look at mechanism. So this is our process of coming up with mechanisms. This is the favorite bot that we ever built. This is going to be for a joint product, and it's just a rapid fire way to come up with mechanisms. It might be cheating a little bit because one of the examples is probably this stuff, but let's see. Also, way cheaper in terms of points, tokens. That's actually really important. There's a lot that goes into the mechanisms because I've written a lot of health copy, but they work for anything. They're honestly both good. There's some on here I like a lot, joint drought is like one it's already trained on, and that's actually in the VSL, so we don't need that. 4 a.m. inflammation surge. The name is horrible. The idea that this happens, whatever, is not bad. It's not great though. But it's an interesting concept. This is very simple, but it's also good. Cartilage flare is really good. Cartilage starvation loop is interesting. It's probably a little too abstract. Cushion gap. Kind of boring, but it's not bad. Joint suffocation is good. Morning rust is good. Bone-on-bone acceleration. Interesting, like this 2 millimeter threshold is interesting. Like the idea itself is boring, but that part is good. Pain echo loop, too abstract. Sand of the hinge is good. Hidden joint infection is good. Calcium paradox is decent. This is not that good. That could be pretty good. That's good. That's good. That's too abstract. That's interesting, but not the best. I would honestly kind of neck and neck. I feel like the ones that Claude came up with, I would say these on average are better, and these have more misses, but the highs are really good, and it's very specific. So that's kind of a toss-up. So honestly, kind of tied, I would say, between these two. The fact that this is cheaper is awesome. I guess my impression overall is that I would still use Claude for anything that has to do with writing, and I would use GPT for anything that's doing analysis, and it really does make a big difference in terms of like the naturalness of things like that. So that's my overall take. That's all I have on this video. Put in the comments below, either on my main channel or on this channel, and I'll just go through and continue to answer these for you guys, and that's all I got. Let me know what else you want to hear or talk about. Peace.